This is the beginning of our fall quarter study. A couple of quarters ago, we did a class on Ecclesiastes, and as we were brainstorming about what we would study next, we thought about Proverbs. And one of the beautiful things about Proverbs is that it's very practical. It's very much day-to-day life. And so we're going to begin this study this week. I'm scheduled to be in Oscoda, Michigan next week for their Bible lectureship, so we will skip a class. But then when I return, we have to do Proverbs topically. There's no way we're going to go through every verse of Proverbs. So we'll be looking at wisdom and the wise person. So if you want to read in Proverbs and look for that subject, be my guest. The Bible is made up of a number of different styles of writing. There's historical narrative. There's poetry, like in the Psalms. There are parables. And Proverbs is one of those unique styles of writing. So what I want to do this morning is kind of introduce us to Proverbs. And the first part of this we'll call a reader's guide, so that we know what we're looking at. First of all, a proverb is very brief. It's about 24, 25 words. And I want you to think about, the bulletin article on Sunday morning is probably 400, 450 words. So the writer of a proverb is trying to condense wisdom down into as few words as he can do. And that makes them memorable sorts of things. They're short. Their brevity lends to them being something that sticks with us. A proverb is usually concrete rather than abstract. Usually a universal truth is seen by a particular situation. And let me give you an example. This is Proverbs 14:4, if you want to turn to it. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of an ox. Now, you can't get any more concrete than dealing with ox stalls, can you? That's concrete. And yet, if you were to think about this proverb, what is its meaning? Can you say this in a way that's not the proverb itself?
If you want to get something done, you might have to get your hands dirty.
Okay. Sometimes work requires unpleasant things in order to reap the benefits, right? Fertilizer. And the moving of that fertilizer. But you can see how we can take a proverb about oxen and begin to apply it to other situations. Probably all of our jobs have something unpleasant about them, but in order to be productive and to receive the rewards, we have to do the unpleasant things too. By the way, let me remind you of an English proverb, because we have proverbs as a part of our culture too. A stitch in time saves 9. Now, what does that mean? What kind of advice is being given? What? Okay, it'll save you more stitches later. The picture is of a garment with a hole, and one stitch will fix it, but if you neglect it, you may have a rip that needs 9 stitches, or maybe you're in danger of losing the whole garment, right? So it's kind of a warning that taking care about something small may prevent it from becoming something big, right, Dave?
instead of getting rid of the rust in a car and wait till I get a hole in it, then the rust causes a hole, and then it costs a lot of money to fix it. Just
Okay.
get rid of the rust when you see it.
Okay.
Saves time. And
Everyone, we're going into winter. Take that advice. A proverb is a general truth, and it's a mistake for us to read them as promises, as guarantees. And let me give you an example. Proverbs 10:27. If you want to turn to Proverbs 10:27. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. Now let me ask you a question. Do the good ever die young? Yeah. And we've all probably faced that tragedy, if not in our own families, then at least with friends. Do the wicked sometimes live a long life? We said that one even more strongly than the good die young. So we're really convinced of that one. But the point of the proverb is something like this. In general, if you follow the wisdom of God, will you live a longer life? I see you shaking your head, yes. I think that's in general true. There may be some specifics, situations where it's not true, but it's a general truth. And we read a proverb like that, and the encouragement for us is to live God's way, knowing that probably prolongs our lives. I need a cough button. By the way, let me remind you of one. This one's Proverbs 22:16. 6, not 16. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. I've got one in my mouth. So another one in my mouth is not going to intensify it much. But thank you for the effort. It's just this is a bad allergy season. And my reason for bringing this one up is if we see this as a general truth, then we won't hit parents over the head whose children have gone off, but they've gone off in their adulthood, even though they were raised properly. See, it's a general truth. And we need to grasp that general truth. So we're training our children while we have that opportunity. But it's not a promise, it's not a guarantee. It's a general kind of truth. Proverbs are striking, memorable, and poetic in form. For example, Proverbs 15:1. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I think that's memorable. It's poetic. Now, how would you just state its truth? Okay, I would say something like this. Stay away from angry words in an argument in order to cool off the situation. Now, mine's not poetic. You're not going to remember mine. But it's stating, I think, basically what this proverb is stating. But you're dealing with something more striking, more poetic, more memorable. Proverbs require wisdom to apply properly to various situations. Turn to Proverbs 26:7. Like a lame man's legs, which hang useless, is the proverb in the mouth of fools. What is this proverb teaching us? Okay, the fool doesn't know how to use the meaning in the proverb. He may know the words, but he really doesn't know how to apply it. What situations to use it in? Turn to Proverbs 26, verse 4. And then I'll read verse 5. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Now, is this a contradiction?
Once again, it's knowing when to use the proverb.
Yeah, it's a matter of, the fact that they're one right after another means the author knows that they sound contradictory. But the idea is you have to know the situation in which to apply them. By the way, I think the first one probably applies to Facebook most of the time. Okay, just a clue. On Facebook, it may be better to let the fool spout his folly. But we have proverbs that are like that too. For example, he who hesitates is lost. Look before you leap. Now, which is it? Well, the writer of those sorts of proverbs, no, it depends on the situation. You're going to have a little bit of wisdom to know what to do in any given circumstance. Proverbs are both simple and profound. It's easy to read, and yet we could think about them for a while. They have some meaning for us to kind of contemplate. Simple words, but profound truths. Proverbs are best read slowly. Now this one is difficult. The first time I read through Proverbs all the way, I had a goal of reading the Old Testament during a semester. Well, you have to read a lot of Old Testament to read it in a semester. I was in college. I was in graduate school. So that's rapid reading of Proverbs. I've typically read through the Bible every year. I have read through the Bible every year. And I'm not certain how many years. It's probably, it's probably 37 at this point. And a reading through the year sort of thing, you're reading chapters of Proverbs at a time. Now that I'm retired, I can go slower. Matter of fact, I kind of go slower automatically. Crossway published, this is Proverbs. And by the way, I'll put up the picture. You can see they didn't put many Proverbs on a page. So Proverbs is not a very big book. And they designed this so you just read one of these pages, not both of them, a day. And it would take you through Proverbs in a year. And I've done that, and I liked it a lot. Going more slowly is beneficial. Now, I'm not going to discourage you from reading the Bible in a year and reading chapters of Proverbs at a time. It's better to have read them than not to have read them. But let me encourage you, going slowly matters a great deal. Proverbs use, now we're into kind of a literary guide. We're talking a little bit more about characteristics of the genre. Use parallelism. That means you have two lines and they're parallel in some way. So let me give you the parallelisms, and I'm going to say it in ordinary language, okay? And then I'll give you the technical term, and don't blame me for the technical term. Two lines saying basically the same thing. That's synonymous parallelism, and I'm not so much concerned about you knowing the terminology that I had a hard time saying, but understanding the idea. and looking at the structure of something when you see it. You also have two lines that are contrasted together, so that's antithetical parallelism. The two lines say opposite things. In Proverbs, we have something maybe a little different from Hebrew poetry in general. We have two unbalanced lines that are contrasted. So let me explain that one to you a little bit. Turn to Proverbs 10, verse 5. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. Now, you might not have noticed that those lines are unbalanced, but they are. Mauser, in his book called Walking in Wisdom, says, this invites you to make various inferences from one idea to another in order to restore the symmetry which is lacking in the explicit words of the prophets. As you restore, to some degree, the balance which is lacking, meaning emerges from the proverb, which was otherwise hidden. Let me put the proverb up with the ideas in a way that we see the balance and the unbalance. He who gathers balances he who sleeps. In summer balances in harvest. Prudent son doesn't have anything in the second line to balance it. But what would be the opposite of prudent? Now it's easy, I have it written up on the screen. It's foolish. So he who sleeps in harvest is foolish. The proverb says, he who sleeps in harvest brings shame. There's nothing corresponding to that in the first line, but what's the opposite of shame? Honor. So he who gathers in summer is a prudent son who brings honor. After we've reflected on the unbalanced elements of the proverb. And I think this is one of those, once I learned that, I thought this is neat. And it may not excite you as much as it did me. That's okay. I like these kind of things. But you can kind of watch for that. And I can't remember the proverb. I was reading it recently. But if I balance the lines, it meant that the poor man's son was honorable. And I thought, well, that's a profound, interesting thought. And it's when you see these unbalanced characteristics, it's good to explore them. Two lines where one provides the illustration for the other line, that's emblematic parallelism. And there's a bunch of other parallelisms, but I probably have paralyzed you with parallelisms with just these four. But if you can remember a little bit about this, it helps you in your reading of Proverbs. Proverbs may compare one class of things to another. For example, Proverbs 19, verse 26. He who does violence to his father and chases away his mother is a son who brings shame and reproach. Those who bring shame and reproach on one side, those who do violence on the other side. And there's a comparison. In fact, probably if we were drawing a Venn diagram, we'd place the first one in the second one. We draw a circle for the second one. We just place that first one in it. Here's a comparison between two classes of things. Proverbs may argue from the lesser to the greater, or on occasion, the greater to the lesser. And by the way, this is an important observation just for Scripture in general. Jesus will use lesser to greater arguments at times. And just recognizing that those are there and kind of seeing what's going on. Let me give you an example. So the puzzle when you do this is just to say, well, what do these two things have in common? And then maybe consider how do they differ. Proverbs 15:11 reads, I'll give you a chance to open that if you want. Sheol and Abaddon lie open before the Lord. How much more the hearts of the children of man? I'd say lesser to greater. How are they similar? Well, their similarity simply means God knows, right? God is omniscient. The depths of Sheol are not hidden from him, but neither are the hearts of men. And that's one of those things for us to contemplate, to think about. God knows our hearts. Proverbs may express better this than that. You know, the statement is giving certain priorities for us. And so we have to ponder, well, why is this priority the right priority? Proverbs 16:16, if you want to turn to that, this is an example of a better this than that proverb. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Well, why is this true? Okay, you may very well lose it. Many a winner of a lottery has lost their money within just a few years. I was reading a story of a man who inherited his father's pickup truck, and the truck was worth $50,000, and he really wanted a Ford Mustang. And he traded it in, and he got the Ford Mustang for free, which was far lesser in value than the pickup truck. So he got taken, and then within 6 months, he and his friend had totaled the Mustang. They were both drunk. His friend was driving without a license, and he only had liability on the car. Now, do you think he was a wise man? I think if we were to look at Proverbs as kind of a whole, you would see that having wisdom helps you gain material possessions. And I think we need to be very cautious as we read through Proverbs and we see this word wealth. Because I want to tell you, I think most all of us have some wealth. Now, we don't feel wealthy, right? But because we've been wise in how we've handled our affairs, we've saved some money. And in our culture, you need to. I'm in retirement. I'm very well aware of that. I've gone to the financial planner. I know all about that. And the wise person knows how to save. And by the way, what I've found, and I've had to do quite a bit of fundraising with Beechwood Hills through the years, is that those people who are not living on the margin all the time are the people who can usually give you something. If a person is living right on the margin, it may be very difficult. That doesn't mean they can't, The widow with her two mites is someone who was living on the margin, living probably day to day. But we can see that wisdom will help you accumulate the things you need. It will also teach you how to use it so you're generous as well. And so we can see the priority that's there. Let me give you another one. Turn to Proverbs 20:19. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. And you can see the contrast. Morsel versus feasting, quiet versus strife. So why is this better? It's not the right verse. What did I say? Proverbs 17:1. But now you know the one that will come next. Well, not next, but along the way. Help you to look at the right verse? I'm sure it does. And you wonder whether Solomon has some experience with this. You know, maybe a little more strife in his house than he liked. But at any rate, we see this comparison. Something about peace, even if we're lacking a little bit, rather than strife and this plenty. Proverbs may make a statement followed by a consequence or an application. Proverbs 20, verse 4. Oh, let's go to 2019. Do you still have your finger in it? He who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with the one of loose lips. There's an application here, right? It's the application. Well, yeah, I think that's probably true, but there's something else there, right? It's about who you associate with. If this person is known to go around revealing secrets, if that's the reputation, are you really going to want to share your secrets with them? Would it be wise to share your secrets with them? And the answer is no. Go to Proverbs 20, verse 4. The sluggard does not plow. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. Now, obviously, their growing season is a little different than ours. But if you don't plow when it's time to plant, well, you have a harvest. So this is showing a consequence of not taking care of your land. And there are a number of proverbs like this. To make certain, is this working still? To make certain that you've taken care of the things you need to take care of first. Proverbs may make a statement followed by the basis for the statement. Proverbs 16:26 illustrates this. A worker's appetite works for him, for his mouth urges him on. You see the basis? You know, we work because we need to provide for ourselves, and that includes food, clothing, and shelter. And then if we have a family, we work because we need to provide all that for them. Are there days that you feel like not working? Are there days where you just wish you could say, stuff it to this job? Most of us don't do that, though, do we? Our hunger, our need, drives us on to do our work. Proverbs may make a statement followed by a purpose or result. Turn to Proverbs 17, verse 23. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the ways of justice. Why does he receive a bribe? Because he's going to give a favorable ruling to the person who bribes him, and that usually is a perversion of justice. Proverbs 14, verse 27. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to turn aside from the snares of death. Again, you see a purpose. You go to the fountain of life in order to turn from the snares, the traps that death presents. Now, what I want you to notice, and these three that are on the screen, is all of them are dealing with logical connections within a proverb. And I'm not certain you're going to remember these three statements. I'm guessing that you won't. By the way, if you want my notes, you can email me, you can talk to me. I'll gladly share them with you, and I mean more than what's up on the screen. But if you know that there's logical connections within some proverbs, and noticing those and kind of naming, well, what is this logical connection? And I've given you examples: consequence or application, basis or purpose or result. It helps you kind of get a handle on what this proverb is about. Now, I'm calling this introductory, because in biblical studies, introduction usually talks about authorship and date. Authorship and date. So I want to kind of give you an overview of Proverbs. Proverbs is composed of a number of collections. And I would say there's something comparable to our songbooks. I had a songbook growing up that was at my home congregation. It had far fewer songs in it than the songbook we have in our pew. Well, why? Well, we collected more songs. And another editor came along and did another songbook. And a lot of the songs from the songbook I grew up with are in our songbooks today, but there are additional ones. So, what do we see? Well, if you take a look at Proverbs 1:1 or Proverbs 10:1, you'll see those sections as labeled as Proverbs of Solomon. If you look at 22:17, you'll see it's listed as words of the wise. In 24:23, more sayings of the wise, right? 25:1, there's additional or more Proverbs of Solomon. And 30, verse 1, the words of Agur. And at 31, verse 1, the words of Lemuel. Now, you kind of have to notice that, the Proverbs that follow are kind of a collection of Proverbs. And we can see how Proverbs as a collection grew over a period of time. So, when was Proverbs written? Well, Solomon's reign began around 970, 960. Our timelines can vary slightly. And we read about Proverbs that deal with the Babylonian captivity. We hung up our harps by the rivers of Babylon. So the Proverbs probably go into the Persian period, and the Persian period began with Cyrus defeating Babylon in 539 BC. How far into that period, I don't know. But that gives us an idea that Proverbs Proverbs was written over a period of more than 400 years. And so you have people collecting them until they're in the final form that we have. For example, take a look at Proverbs 25:1. Proverbs 25:1. These also are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. So this would give us some editorial work being done during Hezekiah's time. They're copying Proverbs that they didn't know before and had found, and that becomes a part of the book that we know as Proverbs. Now, I've dumped a lot of information on you. Do you have questions or things you want to talk about Proverbs?
Going back a little bit, gossip.
Yeah, you're going back in the lesson.
You're going back in the lesson. Secrets Butch's gossip. And seems like bad news travels faster than good news. And over the years, people like to exaggerate somewhat. And years ago, I heard a story about an elder. And they said they told somebody that this elder went into a bar. And the next person not only went into a bar, but stayed there a long, long time. The next person, not only a long, long time, but came out staggering. And another person added one, and he almost fell down drunk. And we found out what happened. The guy in the bar, his wife, wanted the elder to go in there and get this guy to come home.
Yeah.
And that's all he did. He didn't drink or anything. But by the time he got there, the elder was done, And he just went in to get the wife's husband home.
Well, I would hope in a healthy church situation he's not done. I think gossip has to be recognized and it has to be challenged. But obviously gossip can destroy people, and Proverbs certainly warns us about gossip. That's one of the things. Words are an important subject within Proverbs, and that will probably be one of the subjects we look at. Anything else about Proverbs? Do you like reading them? Okay. In the back.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarity between Christ and the parables that he taught to what you're going through here with Proverbs. One in particular is when Christ is explaining why he's giving the parables in the first place. And he's talking about, he says in Matthew 13, he talks, "This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand." And to your point, you brought up about the lame man
Yeah,
and
right.
the use of his legs, having to see through some of the physical things to see the spiritual application of those things. And he explains the real reason why the eyes don't see and the ears don't hear. In verse 15, he says, "For this people's heart has grown dull." And like the example you have of going through it real slowly, one small little bite at a time, is so many parallels to Proverbs and why maybe the heart was dull because it was looking to quickly find an answer rather than a well thought out consideration of the spiritual gleaning, which is truly the lesson for us to learn both from Proverbs and from the parables.
Okay. Jesus' parables are short and pithy as well. And Jesus does tell some proverbs. He does make proverbial statements. And I think that overall statement that probably needs to be reinforced. We have to be seekers of wisdom for us to gain wisdom. Seekers of wisdom for the Proverbs to make sense. Go ahead, Greg.
Just to piggyback on what Clinton has said, and what you started off with about just reading one proverb and focusing on that. I read a devotional where it said, if you know how to worry, then you know how to meditate. Worry is turning the same thought over and over, or concern in your mind over and over, and that's also the same as meditation, only it's a biblical thought or a biblical truth.
Yeah, you're trying to think about positive things, godly things, rather than the worry. Okay, we'll close here. Next week, someone else will be teaching. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And the subject will be wisdom and the wise person. So you can look through Proverbs. It doesn't take a long time to read through Proverbs quickly, but I would encourage you in your reading of Proverbs. Thank you very much.